Summer is here, and despite of the current situation, our mind cannot but help turning to the idea of beaches, riversides, and jumping into lakes. But anybody with enough experience would tell you how unexpected and treacherous these waters in the wild can be. The myths of such creatures as Siren or Lorelei are indeed the danger of waters personified. But in Korea, 물귀신, literally translated to a water ghost, particularly has a big presence and a popular fixture in horror genre. Any individual unfortunate enough to drown in the water can turn into a water ghost, him or herself. The story goes, both the spirit of the dead and water belong to yin, as opposed to fire and living that belong to yang. And because a body of wild water such as river, sea, and lake represents much stronger energy of yin, a dead spirit would be forever trapped in the water, as if in the strong magnet field, and fail to move on to the next world. It is said that the only way out for these unfortunate ghosts is to drown another person to replace their doomed position. So in the dark of the water, they are patiently waiting to snatch up the unsuspecting swimmer's feet and drag them down under. This idea of predatory water ghosts is so prevalent, it even turned into such an idiom as 물귀신 작전, to play a water ghost, meaning to drag an unwilling party into an undesirable situation or activity. So, before you decide to go for a swimming in the lake this summer, have a listen to these allegedly true cautionary tales about water ghosts from Korea. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by your host, Anthony. This first story has been circulating on the Korean web probably about a decade in various incarnations, and this particular version presented here is most likely not the original. This story has been so popular because, I believe, it depicts an archetypal idea of a water ghost in Korea. I served in the military in Gangwon province. I was then a private first class, the busiest rank in the life of a soldier. I'd been working all summer long in the heat wave and secretly prayed the monsoon season hit hard. Heavy rain might save me from working outside every day, or so I hoped. Heaven might have heard my prayer, and the rainfall during the monsoon was massive. So much so that the nearby town suffered flooding. For the subsequent restore effort, the local fire brigade wasn't enough, and soldiers also had to join in. It was such a small town that we were already somewhat acquainted with the local firefighters, as we occasionally had a football match together. The most urgent task was to search for the missing persons, basically their dead bodies. Water was still so high beyond the usual boundary of ground and river that we had to search around on a small boat by the teams of 2. I myself was teamed up with a Sergeant Park. The search was already into its 4th day, and we were aimlessly rowing up and down the same route we'd been searching around for the previous days. Then I spotted something among the bush of tall weeds above the water. Something similar with the weeds, but much too dark, almost black for a weed. Shiver ran down my spine as I realized that it might be human hair. My suspicion grew stronger as we approached near, though I'd never seen a drowned person before. I'd never seen any dead body before, to be honest. I said to Sergeant Park, "Sergeant?" "What?" "I think I spotted a dead body." "What? You're joking?" "No, I swear." "Shit. Where is it?" I rode towards the direction to show him. Sergeant Park seemed quietly upset, and then abruptly said, That's not a body. Let's move on. I still think that is a body. That's too black for a weed. What do you know? It's not. Let's go. Shouldn't we at least check it out? Don't make me repeat myself, Private. We are going. But we should. You fucking son of a bitch! Are you deaf or stupid? I said move on! He suddenly lost his temper and started to shout a set of swears at me. I could not understand why. All I suggested was to check it out to make sure. But what could I do, being just a private? We sailed on. At the end of the search, Sergeant Park stopped me and said, "Sorry about the earlier. It was nothing serious. Why don't you report your find to one of the firefighters over there?" Sergeant Park was already well known for his temper, and it was unusual that he'd apologize at all, I thought. And then I saw his expression was unusually stiff and grim. So I approached the group of firefighters taking a smoke break and told them that I seemed to have spotted a body. Most of them seemed not quite sure, but one of them asked me about the detailed whereabouts. I answered as much as I could, which somehow lightened my guilty conscience. Next morning I returned to the base camp to continue the search, and met with people talking about a firefighter gone missing from the day before. A heavy hunch hit me hard. I asked who that was to describe how he looked, and figured out it was the one who asked me about the whereabouts of the dead body I spotted. Sergeant Park, standing next to me, had gone pale. I asked him what was wrong, and he took me away to a quiet corner to ask me, "Are you sure there was a body you saw yesterday?" "Why do you ask, Sergeant?" "Did you see the face?" "No, I only saw what looked like its hair." "Right. Just a hair, no face, eh?" "Yes, but you insisted it wasn't a person." Silence. Sergeant Park didn't say anything for a good few minutes before he opened his mouth again. "My family is, bit superstitious. An auntie is a shaman, and we do have lots of shamanic rituals, etc. You see, when I was younger, people kept drowning in the river near my home, and my aunt was brought in to perform a ritual." "Yes?" "Auntie told me after the ritual that if I ever happened to find a drowned body in the river or sea, I should never touch it." "But how does one retrieve the body otherwise?" "Never touch it before observing it carefully. A body drowned could never be standing upright straight in the water. It usually has to be floating at an angle, if not fully horizontally, so that one could see the side of the head or an ear at least. But you said all you saw was hair, didn't you?" "What's that supposed to be then?" "That was a water ghost. You see, a drowned soul cannot just pass on to the heaven. It has to find the next victim to replace itself." I was frozen still. I understood only then why Sergeant Park swore at me yesterday. He doubted that it was a normal drowned victim, but could not explain as he himself wasn't entirely sure. Only when he found out that the firefighter who went to the spot went missing could he be assured that it was a vindictive water ghost after all. Days passed and the water receded. The town went back to its normal life, but the missing firefighter was never recovered. After I discharged from the military, I once went back to the town for a summer holiday. I heard then townspeople saying that there's this particular spot in the river where at least a couple of people would drown to death every year, and no shamanic rituals seem to have any effect. Back in 2008, I was a high school student. I happened to get friendly with a senior student, and one day I joined him, his girlfriend, and some other girls and guys to a day out to the river. I knew his girlfriend was somewhat spiritually gifted. She was all fine on the way, but when we hit the river bank, turned visibly upset. We asked her what was up, but all she said was, "I'm not going into the water." Soon all the boys were in the water having fun and splashing to each other. All the while, his girlfriend kept looking at our direction, shivering despite the summer heat. Other girls who'd been keeping the side of the girlfriend seemed to want to join the boys in the water. But as soon as one of the girls who couldn't swim put her feet into the water, she went mad, shrieking and screaming. We were all stunned and took her well away from the riverside and calmed her down. Her crying eventually turned into quiet sobbing, and she started to explain what she saw. On the water were floating heads, the heads of the water ghosts. She freaked out, but they seemed not paying attention to the boys playing in the water, so she just kept watching them out. But when the girl who couldn't swim hit the water, she saw the heads all lifting up and start laughing menacingly at the girl. I'm so traumatized with the experience, I wouldn't soak into any water other than in the bathtub now. In the summer of my 12th year, our extended family went to spend a day on the pretty little riverside not far from where my grandparents lived. Families of my aunt and 2 uncles joined, making it 17 of us. It was a rare occasion that these families living in different parts of the country gathered together, and adults opened bottles already in the day and busy catching up with each other. Meanwhile, 9 kids of various ages, including myself, were playing in the water. It was a beautiful spot. Water was cool, and despite the recent rainy season, water kept clear emerald green. The river wasn't too wide, about 8 meters, and on the opposite of where we were playing was a brown rock, somewhat looking like a tiger crouching among tall grass, and in front of it a small whirlpool was formed, pulling the tall grass around in. I was a country boy and a confident swimmer. I wanted to show off to other cousins fresh from big cities. "Hey, exchange your swim ring with mine if I manage swimming across the river. Deal?" I said. I'd been lusting after my 9-year-old cousin's swim ring with my favorite anime character on it. "Watch me going without a swim ring. I'll show you real countryside freestyle." I heard my cousin saying, "Don't bother, I'm not exchanging my swim ring." But regardless, I jumped into the water. About halfway there, to further show off my skill, I flipped to backstroke. "Are you all watching how good I am?" I shouted, enjoying the warmth of sunlight on my belly. Not 2 meters further across the river, I suddenly felt chills on my back. Anybody who has sufficient experience of swimming in the nature may understand such a moment, when the river, lake, or stream that you've been swimming in many times suddenly feels scary, like a big black hole that is going to swallow you in. Feeling a bit uncomfortable, I switched back to freestyle and saw in the water something crossing in the water in the same direction as mine. I just thought it was my own shadow. I felt I reached the rock by grass brushing on my body. To give a grand finish to my show, I foolishly chose to dive in the water. Under the water, around the rock, were unrecognizable objects mangled together. I wondered what they were, but seemed a good 3-4 meters deep and didn't think I could hold my breath so long, so I crawled up on the rock. Yeah! See, your swim ring is mine now! My declaration of victory was met by silence. All the adults were busy among themselves drinking, and other kids were catching fish good 20 meters down the river. The sound of their chattering and laughter made me feel isolated, as if I fell away from them to a different dimension. I waited a while alone on the rock. For some reason, swimming back seemed a long way off, and what had seemed pretty green water just a moment ago now felt like a wide open mouth of a serpent waiting to swallow me. I cried out for my parents. Mom, Dad, throw me my swim ring, please. No reply. They seemed not even taking a notice. Seeing other kids playing down the river without me vexed me. Having lost the enthusiasm now, I carefully crawled down the rock. When my whole body submerged, I felt that I was standing on something rather than floating. It felt supple and tickling. I put my goggles on and looked down under the water to find out what it was. It was a girl, probably a bit younger than myself, with long hair. I was stepping on her head, who was floating diagonally in the water. Her hair, whirling about in the whirlpool, was about to touch my feet. I froze with fear. Next moment, I realized I was floundering in the water. Help! Help me! Help! I got a cramp all over my body. Something shadowy seemed pulling me into the water. Then I saw my dad running towards me. He couldn't swim and would usually stay well away from the water, but he was literally running across the water. But before he could reach me, he disappeared into the water. By then I was going under, and what I saw in the water with my flickering consciousness was 2 bodies swaying in the water, surrounded by numerous toys. They were faintly smiling, as if from a sympathy. When I woke up, I was in the local medical center. My mother saw Dad plunging into the water. Knowing he couldn't swim, she alerted uncles. One of them, who had served in Marine, jumped in for our rescue, and the other called the emergency number. So were saved both of our lives. Later, Dad recounted me what he saw. When I went under, at first I couldn't see anything in the dark. Then I saw some white shadow swimming over to me. I thought it was you. But it wasn't one. 2 girls, holding what looked like dolls in their right hand, came to me. One held my hand and the other my thigh and pulled me deeper down. I heard them giggling in the midst of the noise of water filling up my ear. The girl pulling my thigh didn't even have arms and was using her mouth. And then he heard them saying, not through his ears, but mind, "Your son is waiting. We'll carry you down to him. You don't want to leave him alone, do you? Don't struggle and come follow us." When he kept struggling, "You're coming with us. "Shut up now," they said, and pushed the head of the doll she was holding into Dad's mouth. And that was what he remembered last. I was born and grew up in Seoul, but after some serious conflicts in my primary school, I decided to move to a country village, leaving everything behind. And it happened that summer. There was a large stream nearby which had several spots with unexpected deep water and hidden whirlpools, and every year there were several casualties, usually visitors from other towns. That year too, a man was gone missing while fishing or swimming. It was actually my and some other village boys' favorite spot to swim. But because the waterhole was shaped like a ginger jar and the water was murky, it could be dangerous had you not known the depth. I and other kids watched on as some guys searching in the water with the long bamboo sticks, while a woman, probably a family of the missing person, was crying on the side. There was no sign of the body despite various methods of searching. I don't know where I got the sudden courage, probably wanted to show off to other boys, but I put on my large goggle and jumped into the water. I dived in probably about a meter. In the hazy view of the murky water, I saw a chubby guy in a white tank top whirling around in the whirlpool. I was a bit scared, but too young to realize he was long dead already. I dived further to grab his shirt. Then I saw the face of a woman holding onto the feet of the dead man. Dressed in an old-fashioned clothes, her long hair were floating about like a black seaweed. Her laughing mouth looked so much redder in contrast to a white face. I screamed in the water, and I'll never forget her stare when she turned to look at me. I don't remember exactly what happened afterwards. I thought I swam back for my dear life, but others later told me I came upon the surface, frantically crying help like a mad boy while holding onto the hair of the drowned man. They simply thought I panicked because of the dead body and tried to calm me down. I could not mention about the ghost when the family of the deceased was bewailing next to me. You can call me a coward, but almost 30 years later, I still wouldn't go near rivers, lakes, or streams for the memory of that woman in the water. Hello everyone, this is Anthony, and thank you very much for your listening. This was sort of summer special for you, and I think another set of water ghost stories shall follow before summer ends. By the way, as I mentioned in the previous video, I've got a new mic, and I hope you could hear that it's much cleaner now. I'm still learning the technical side of things, but shall get better bit by bit. So, if you'd like, please like, comment, subscribe, and click the notification bell to help the new channel grow. Then, until the next, take care.